Dixie and George, thank you so much for being here today. I understand you're both stepping up. You've stepped up to the plate, and you're the co-chairs this year for the annual Alzheimer's Walk. So tell me what's going on with the Alzheimer's Walk this year, Dixie.
We are having the official name is the North Central Arkansas Alzheimer's Walk and Night of Lights.
Night of Lights,
okay. It's just to raise money and awareness for Alzheimer's. All the money goes to Alzheimer's Arkansas for their support groups and caregivers support and different things like that.
And it's so important.
It is.
That we have those
This
fundraisers.
is our third.
It's going to be the third that we've done for them, yeah.
Third that we've done for them, so.
Good for you, both of you, for stepping up to do this, because it does take a lot of time away from your regular jobs.
It does.
And it's just wonderful because each year it grows. More people know about it, expect it this time of the year in October, and they're ready to come up and help by walking. So tell us, what are they going to be doing this year?
Well, we're actually going to start with registration at 5 o'clock on the 26th, and then the event's going to start at 6 o'clock. It's just an opportunity for people, families, to get together with others that are impacted by the disease, Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia. And the reason it's called Night of Lights, it's kind of fun. One of the big features is we have luminaries, which are both in honor of and in memory of people that have been affected by Alzheimer's disease. And those are all laid out around the track. And
this is right at the high school, isn't it?
It's at Bomber Stadium.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're all decorated individually, you know, as for instance, I'm doing two, one for my father and one for my grandmother. But they're individually decorated, and then they're lit up around the entire outside of the track, and it's just really a powerful, powerful scene.
Very moving.
And it means a lot to the people that are involved in it, that have made this. You know, they go through and point it out, and lots of hugs, lots of tears, lots of support. It's a fun night.
It's a fun night.
And as you mentioned, not only is it something that people are starting to look forward to, but it's also something that is very prevalent in our community. Over 75,000 people in Arkansas are affected by Alzheimer's. So if you don't personally have somebody in your family, you certainly know somebody that does.
It touches so many lives in so
Exactly.
many ways. Because it's never just, I'll say the patient coming from the hospital background, but the person itself who has a dementia, Alzheimer's in particular, I mean, it just touches the whole family.
It does. Everybody knows somebody who's been affected by it. I mean, if you haven't yourself, somebody you know has been. So it's very, I feel blessed to be able to do this and to raise the money and the support and the awareness.
And the awareness, and especially the awareness, I know that the Muruck Family Education Center on Aging does a lot with Alzheimer's and with educating people, and I'm going to suggest to folks too that not only do they do this, but that they stop by the Muruck House and pick up some of the wonderful literature. It's all free, it's all available. You know, get yourself educated. Nothing's more heartbreaking. George, I don't know what your experiences were or how much you'd want to share today, but from personal experience with some of folks I've known over the years.
Well, glad to share. The reason I got involved, my parents, as you and I have talked, my parents are in Buffalo. We're in Buffalo. I lost my father in 2011. But all the children had lived out of state. And so when my dad was diagnosed and they got confirmation, he actually sent a letter to all the kids. It was very carefully worded, you know, positive outlook, et cetera, but it was difficult for us because we were out of state. My mom was his primary caregiver and was up until about a month before he passed. She was able to care for him at home, which is not always the case.
Right.
But the pressure as kids was that we knew there was so much we should be doing to help her, but logistically we couldn't be there as often as she needed help, and it was just a horrible feeling, compounded by each time that we would go back to Buffalo, it was that much more prevalent.
Right.
You know, the changes.
Yeah.
It wasn't seeing him every day in the slow progression. It was, you know, boy, so much in 3 months' time has changed. So that's what I really like about Alzheimer's Arkansas, is their focus, and everything that they raise stays in the state of Arkansas, but their focus is to help the caregivers. They do a number of things. There's ongoing education. You talked about the Muruck Center. That's actually the location of the Alzheimer's support group here in Mountain Home.
Right.
And there are 57 different support groups throughout the state. We also have one in Flippin, there's one in Harrison, all around. So there should be one near anybody that needs it.
That's
Exactly.
viewing this today, you bet.
They also have a 24-hour hotline that they provide for caregivers, because you can imagine when you're alone and things change so quickly, and it's not anything that we're really prepared to deal with. It's nice to know there's somebody at the other end of the phone that you can call and say, this just happened, what do I do? Or I've never seen this, or you know, that can calmly walk you through and give you support.
And you're right, it's so true. And things that people, if they're not well educated about Alzheimer's in particular, and it's the things like you both know with, you know, here's the white plate, and all of a sudden the caregiver says, oh my goodness, you know, my loved one my spouse is not eating, what am I going to do? He's going to lose weight, this will just compound everything else that's going on. And someone at the other end of the phone says, because of what's going on with the eyes, with vision, you turn the plate, and there to their eyes is another whole portion of the meal. They've just not been seeing half of the plate. So, I mean, there's things like this that are just, it's so crucial.
It is, and that's why the support groups are so great, because when you're going through it and you're spending all your time, because as a caregiver, there's not a lot of downtime.
Right.
It's nice to have somebody else in a group environment that can say, yeah, welcome to the club. Here's what we ran into, and here's what we did, and here's something you may want to try.
And those connections are if you're having a bad day, you can call them, and
Absolutely.
they've had those same kind of days. So it's
just to know you're not alone.
Just to know you're not alone.
And this is not out of the norm for that particular person. This is something, you know, with the sundowners, once that's the paranoia. I've seen over the years, some different folks that the paranoia was just horrible because they no longer trusted the ones that loved them the most. Or not only the recognition, but the fear of the person, the caregiver.
And the changes are different in different cases too. You can have, for instance, my mom, her best friend, her husband was also going through Alzheimer's at the same time my dad was. Now their cases were completely different, so if she only had that to rely on, they weren't able to really help each other because they were looking at two scenarios. My dad, in his situation, it was never a case where, you know, she had to worry about him going out the front door and wandering. And yet, in the case of this other individual I'm talking about, that was a very real concern. He would leave, you know, turn around if he had the opportunity, he'd be out the front door. So, you know, it's nice to have a wide spectrum because you have people that have seen and experienced.
I always think of my sister, her father-in-law suffered from Alzheimer's, and she is a nurse. The family, the kids, the older kids, thought they would be able to take care of Grandpa at home. And that lasted for a while. It was some of the things become amusing. You have to find the humor in almost anything. And so here are some of the kids sitting at the dining room table and doing their homework and studying, and here comes Grandpa, takes all his clothes off, walks into the bathroom, and they're like, "Grandpa, what are you doing?" He says, "Oh, I need my bath now." You know? And he was definitely a wander risk. So all the neighbors were alerted to, you know, if somehow he gets out one of the doors, please. But also, it then went into where it was no longer safe he was no longer safe to be
Right.
home. So
And the other neat thing that Alzheimer's Arkansas does is they have, at the early stages, support groups and counseling for both the patient and the caregiver. Here's what you can anticipate, and here are the things that you know you should look for and be prepared for and start to. And simple things, and if you talk with somebody that's newly involved in it, at what point do you tell people? You know, that there's
That's
been
a
a
huge-
diagnosis. It's
Sure.
a very big one. So,
that's huge.
you know, that kind of advice, that kind of support and education is ongoing.
What a wise man your father was to
Thank you.
handle everything as he did.
Yep.
Because it was, I'm sure, incredibly difficult for him to do, yet he knew the necessity of it, and for everyone to be there as much as they could be for your mom.
And for family members, in our case, and again, every case is different, but for family members, to know in advance to expect differences, dad's not going to be like dad that you remember, you know, those kind of things are just so helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we need to take a short break. We'll be right back. Don't go away. We've got a lot more information for you to talk about the Alzheimer's Arkansas North Central Walk and Nights of Life. So we'll be right back. Don't go away.